He looked me dead in the eye, lifted his glass of sweet tea, and said, "It's my money, Denise." Like I hadn't just worked a double shift, like I hadn't paid the light bill, the water bill, and the grocery tab, like I didn't matter. That moment? That was the beginning of the end. He just didn't know it yet. My name is Denise Marie Carter. I'm 49 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. I met Terrence in Baton Rouge, right off Plank Road, where the air smelled like fried catfish and motor oil. He worked at Troy's Auto and Body, always had grease under his nails but a grin that made you forget about it. He had that deep southern drawl that could stretch your name out like it was honey on toast. Back then, he'd open doors with one hand and fix engines with the other, always saying, "A man's supposed to make life easier for his woman." I believed him. Because at 27, I still thought love meant sacrifice. The kind you don't question. I just finished my CNA program, working night shifts at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital, saving up for my first car. Back then, I thought exhaustion was proof of effort, not a warning sign. We got married in a small church off Choctaw Drive, one of those brick buildings with squeaky pews and no air conditioning, the kind of wedding where the fans click louder than the preacher. My mama wore her best hat, pale pink with feathers that kept catching the light. Aunt Geraldine was wiping sweat from her forehead between hallelujahs. And me, I was trembling in a thrift store dress, praying my lipstick wouldn't smudge before the pictures. When Terrence lifted my hand and kissed it before my lips, the whole church went soft. He whispered, "You're my peace, Denise." And I believed him again. For the first few years, it was decent. Not perfect, but ours. He worked construction. I worked long shifts at the hospital. Our first apartment had roaches that moved faster than rent increases, but it was home. We'd sit on the balcony at night, eating takeout shrimp po' boys, laughing about the future. We talked about buying land one day, maybe building a small house near Lake Pontchartrain. He'd promise, "One day you won't have to work so hard. I got you." I'd smile, believing that one day was closer than it really was, but peace doesn't disappear all at once. It leaks, slow. It started small. It always does. Terrence began managing the bills, said it was easier if everything came from one account, his account. I was tired, running back-to-back shifts, and when someone offers to lighten your load, you don't argue. You just exhale. I didn't notice the shift at first, until the questions began. "Why'd you spend $18 at Walgreens? You don't need 2 pairs of shoes, Denise. I thought we agreed no fast food this week." Every sentence felt like a small cut. Not enough to bleed, just enough to remind you who holds the knife. I started hesitating before swiping my card, started second-guessing if I deserved a coffee from Dunkin' after a 16-hour shift, started hiding receipts like secrets. And that's when I realized I was shrinking. One Sunday afternoon, laundry piled high, I logged into my bank app and noticed my paycheck was missing. Not late, missing. I checked again, then again. Instead of hitting our joint account, my direct deposit had been rerouted, straight to his. I stared at the screen, blinking like maybe it was a glitch. It wasn't. I walked into the living room, holding my phone tight enough to crack it. He was sprawled across the couch, half watching football, half scrolling on his phone. "Terrence," I said, keeping my voice steady, "did you change my direct deposit?" He didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Yeah, I moved it." Less confusion that way. Less confusion for who? That's when I realized he wasn't managing. He was controlling. The real slap came a year later, our 21st anniversary. I'd gotten off early that day, tired but excited. Stopped by Ruth's Cafe, picked up 2 ribeyes, baked potatoes, and that bread pudding he loved. Spent half my shift daydreaming about surprising him. Bought his favorite beer, even lit a small candle on the kitchen table. When he finally came home, the clock read 10:47 p.m. The steak was cold. The candle had burned down to wax. He smelled like cigar smoke, cheap cologne, and somebody else's laughter. He was holding a crumpled plastic bag from the Chevron station. He tossed it on the table and said, "Happy anniversary," before dropping a $10 grocery gift card next to the plate. Then he laughed. That sound, it wasn't cruel. It was worse. Careless. Like I was a commercial break in his life. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, counting the slow turns. Each rotation sounded like the echo of my mama's voice. Don't let a man confuse providing with controlling. That's how you get lost. I'd gotten lost. Somewhere between double shifts and doing right by him, I'd misplaced myself. Terrence used to kiss my hand. Now he acted like feeding me was charity. I rolled onto my side, stared at the empty half of the bed, and felt something in me harden. Not hate, clarity. The next morning, the sunlight hit different. Golden, quiet, unforgiving. I got up early, made pancakes, not for him, for me. Stacked them high, butter melting slow, syrup catching light like amber. I sat at that table alone, each bite heavy but healing. He came in halfway through, scratching his head, TV remote in hand. Didn't say good morning, just changed the channel and flopped down on the couch. I didn't speak, didn't argue, just watched. And while he watched SportsCenter, I opened my laptop, typed, Louisiana divorce laws, community, property. What I found made me smile. Not the big kind, the small, dangerous kind. Turns out, Louisiana law doesn't care whose name is on the paycheck. If it comes in during the marriage, it's community property. Meaning, his truck? Ours. My check? Ours. The joint debt on those credit cards he secretly maxed out? Ours too. I read every line, every clause, until it felt like scripture. Knowledge. Power. Peace. Then I closed the laptop and exhaled slow. This wasn't going to be a screaming match. This wasn't going to be a kitchen table showdown. No, I was going to let silence do the speaking. That evening, I cleaned the kitchen like nothing had changed, wiped the counters, lit a candle, let the flame dance soft. He was in the den, half asleep with a beer resting on his stomach. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and quiet intention. When I finally sat down, my hands were steady. I opened my purse, pulled out an envelope, and counted the bills inside. Cash, money he didn't know existed, money I'd saved from babysitting the neighbors' kids, baking cakes for church, working extra hospital shifts on weekends. My freedom fund, each dollar carried a story. Exhaustion, resilience, and quiet strategy. It wasn't much yet, but it was growing. And for the first time in years, I felt something like control. I folded the envelope neatly, tucked it back under the lining of my purse, and whispered to myself, let him think he's winning. Because sometimes the best revenge starts with pretending you're still asleep. He came home that Friday with Popeyes and a smug grin, like greasy chicken could fix control issues. The smell hit first, fried spice, salt, and oil, cutting through the quiet like it belonged there. He dropped the paper bag on the table with a thud that rattled the plates, then grinned like he was bringing peace offerings from some great battle I didn't remember starting. Got your favorite, he said, shaking the red and white box so the biscuit slid inside it. Spicy, not mild. You like spicy. His voice was light, but the undertone, that careless confidence, burned more than the chicken ever could. I sat across from him at the kitchen table. He was eating loud, lips smacking, grease glistening on his fingers like he'd worked for the meal himself. Meanwhile, I just sat there, sipping water like it was wine, letting the glass chill my palm, letting silence be the knife between us. He didn't notice the tension. He never did. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and leaned back. You're lucky. Most women don't got a man that provides. That word, provides, hung in the air like a ceiling fan that wouldn't stop spinning. I smiled, soft, patient, and I said, you're right, most women don't. He chuckled, satisfied. Thought I was agreeing with him, but the truth was I'd already made my first move. Every night after that, I started building my Escape. Quietly. Methodically. Like a nurse prepping for surgery. Gloves on, mask tight, emotions sealed. It started small. Always does. I took my lunch breaks at the Chase branch off Florida Boulevard, where nobody knew my name or my husband's. The air inside smelled like printer ink and new carpet. The teller was a young girl, barely 20, with braids the color of honey and eyes too kind to belong in a bank. "Purpose of the new account?" she asked, tapping her keyboard. "For household budgeting," I said with a practiced smile. She looked up, studying me for a second, then smiled back, that quiet kind of knowing smile that only women give each other when they understand something without a single word. "Maiden name?" she asked. "Carter," I said. "Denise Marie Carter." She typed it in, and just like that, my name, my real name, had its own space again. A small freedom hidden behind passwords and paperless statements. I started picking up extra shifts, weekends, holidays, night calls no one else wanted, the kind of hours that break your body but build your plan. On Saturdays, I babysat for Ms. Holloway's grandkids, twin boys with sticky hands and endless questions. On Sundays, I baked sweet potato pies for the church fundraiser and sold 3 extras under the table to Deacon Brown's wife. I didn't spend a single penny. Every dollar, every tip, every crumpled 10 from a grateful patient went into that Chase account. The first time I saw the balance cross $1,000, I cried in the parking lot, face pressed against the steering wheel, whispering, "Keep going." At home, I stayed calm, didn't fight, didn't accuse, didn't let my anger show. I learned to move like water, smooth, quiet, unstoppable. Terrence noticed something was different. He'd lean back in his recliner after work, sipping beer, and watch me like I was a puzzle missing its last piece. "You're not spending like you used to," he said one night, voice casual but curious. "Trying to be more responsible," I answered, eyes on the TV. He smiled, that smug, teacherly grin. "That's good. Learning from me, huh?" I smiled back. Something like that. He didn't know I was learning, all right, but not from him. Her name was Ms. Reeves, 62, black woman with silver curls and reading glasses that hung on a red beaded chain. She had a voice like gravel and silk, rough truth wrapped in grace. When I first met her, her office smelled like lemon oil and legal paper. Stacks of folders lined her desk, each one tagged with names, dates, and stories that probably sounded a lot like mine. She looked over our finances the way a detective studies a crime scene, clicking her tongue, scribbling notes, adjusting her glasses. "You let him put your paycheck in his name?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes, ma'am." She sighed, deep and heavy, like she'd seen it 100 times before. "And you co-signed on that Silverado?" "I didn't know until I got the bill," I said quietly. Ms. Reeves leaned back, her chair creaking like it was tired too. She took a slow breath and nodded. "We'll fix it." 3 words. No judgment, just certainty. She explained it to me like she was teaching a daughter. "In Louisiana," she said, tapping her pen on a printed page, "everything acquired during the marriage is community property. Doesn't matter whose name it's under. Doesn't matter who said what. The law sees both of you as one financial body. So, even if it's in his account, still community. If the money came in while you were married, it's half yours." Her voice softened. "If you can prove it, the income, the purchases, the timing, we have a case." Her confidence was medicine. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in my own house. Safety. I got to work. Every night after Terrence fell asleep on the couch, I became a detective. I logged into our tax portal, downloaded every return from the last 5 years, opened the bank statements, printed them at the library so he wouldn't see. I highlighted everything: grocery runs, ATM withdrawals, payments to places I'd never been. There were charges from a casino in Biloxi, a liquor store near his job, even a hotel on Highland Road that made my stomach twist. I took pictures of the Silverado title, both our names printed in black ink like a curse. I pulled every receipt I could find, gas, gifts, gambling, and stacked them in piles on the kitchen table. Each night, I labeled the pages by month and date. Each one was a brick in the wall I was building between us. Then I bought a cheap brown shoebox from Sears, wrote one word on the lid in black marker, freedom. I kept it hidden under the spare tire in my trunk, safe, unseen, and heavy with quiet proof. One night, he came home at 2:13 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I saw it flash on the microwave when the door slammed. He stumbled in, smelling like Hennessy and somebody else's perfume, that cheap kind that smells like fruit trying too hard to be flowers. He kicked his boots near the laundry basket, but, as always, not in it. They landed with a dull thud, dirt scattering on my clean tile. "I was with the fellas," he muttered, slurring. "Don't start." I didn't even look up. I just folded the blanket on the couch and walked past him like he was a guest I didn't plan to entertain. He fell into bed, snoring within minutes, the kind of sleep only men who believe they'll never face consequences get. I stood there for a long time, staring at his back, listening to that heavy breathing. The smell of liquor and lies filled the room, and that's when it hit me. He didn't just think it was his money. He thought I was his property, too. Something owned, not loved, managed, not cherished. But I wasn't. I was a woman with a plan. A woman raised by another woman who knew that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. My whisper came in the form of a notarized envelope. I remember the weight of it. Thick, sealed, stamped in blue. My name typed neatly at the top, Denise M. Carter v. Terrence L. Carter. I didn't hand it to him yet. Not that night, not the next week, because revenge, real revenge, isn't about the moment you strike. It's about the months you spend preparing for it in silence. Each shift I worked, each dollar I saved, each lie I let him believe. It was all part of the buildup, the slow burn before the explosion. And when that envelope finally opened, it wouldn't just hold legal papers. It would hold every late night, every insult, every withheld dollar he thought he owned. But for now, I let the whisper rest, because the power of silence is that it echoes loudest right before the storm. The morning I filed, the sky was gray, but the air was clear. I wore jeans, a plain white tee, and the same gold earrings I'd had since '98, the ones Mama gave me when I passed my CNA boards. They swung soft when I moved, little moons against my neck. Didn't need to dress up for dignity. I already had it. My freedom folder felt heavy under my arm, but it was a good kind of weight. Paper that proved I existed beyond someone else's ledger. I walked into the courthouse with my freedom folder tucked under my arm, every page in order. Birth certificates, tax forms, credit card statements, bank printouts with little columns of numbers that used to look like math and now looked like evidence. 3 notarized affidavits from coworkers who saw the bruises on my spirit. Not my skin, but the slow erasure of me. They wrote down what they saw, the tired in my eyes, the way I flinched at raised voices, the night shift texts asking if I was okay. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and varnish. The marble floor under my shoes echoed with other people's footsteps, people with their own fights and their own truths. I sat in a wooden chair that had seen better days and filled out forms with a pen that left little blue trails like breadcrumbs. The clerk stamped the papers with a thud that sounded like finality and possibility at once. I filed for divorce, paid in full, in cash. Didn't even blink. It felt like closing a door without slamming it. Quiet and certain. Walking back to my car, the air tasted like rain even though none was falling. I breathed in. For the first time in a long time, I felt the space between breaths widen. When I came home, Terrence was watching reruns of Good Times like his own story hadn't just been rewritten. The TV rattled, laugh track loud enough to cover a confession. He didn't see me stand in the doorway. He never did. He was too busy existing in the version of our life he wanted, one where he was provider, judge, jury. You get. Milk? He asked, not looking up. His voice was casual, like everything was ordinary. I nodded. Got everything I needed. My voice was steady. The words tasted like metal and roses. For the next few weeks, I moved quiet, like a cat on old porch steps, soft, careful, measuring distance. Didn't pack a suitcase, didn't slam doors, didn't change my routine. I smiled, cooked dinner, paid bills like clockwork, folded towels the way I always had, edges aligned, corners neat. The ordinary thing was my armor. The pretending was my tactic. The only thing I did different, I started praying out loud again. Not those soft before-bed prayers that you whisper and mean and forget. No, I prayed while washing dishes, while folding laundry, while brushing my hair in the mirror. The words came steady, like the rhythm of the brush against my scalp. Lord, thank you for reminding me who I am. I said it like a chant. I said it like a promise. Terrence thought I was just getting religious. He watched my hands move at the sink and nodded like he approved this new, quiet piety. But I was just getting free. Then one day, he came home early, red-faced, sweating, the kind of heat that comes from more than physical labor. He slammed his tool bag down like the world owed him comfort and took it out in a voice that shook the air. They cuttin' jobs, he said. I'm going to need you to pick up more hours. I stared at him. In that moment, I saw him the way I used to. A man who could change a tire at midnight. A man who could fix a porch light with a broken smile. But I also saw the small things. The missed dentist appointment I paid for. The vacations he never planned. The nights he came home smelling like other people's perfume. This man hadn't asked how my back felt in 10 years. This man who never remembered my birthday but could quote every line from Scarface. Sure, I said. I'll handle it. The word was small but deliberate. A promise I could keep and a lie I could use. But I was already handling it, legally. My folder was already living in the courthouse, my name already recorded in their files. Paper and ink had my back. That week, he asked if he could borrow from my account. I raised an eyebrow. The audacity of it made the blood hum in my ears. I said, I thought it was your money. He chuckled. The sound was oily. Don't be petty. We in this together. No, sir. We were in it. He meant together as in sinking. The way two anchors drag a boat down. Now I was stepping out, cutting the rope. He started getting nervous. Little things changed. The way he opened the mail like it might bite. The way he hovered at the kitchen table with a pen in his hand and no paper to write. The way he cleared his throat at odd intervals. He started asking me about passwords. Seemed petty, but it was a test. One night, I caught him checking my phone while I was in the shower. The steam fogging the mirror, soap slipping off my skin. He stood there, shoulders hunched, phone in his hand like a guilty child. You hiding something? He asked when I came out, towel tight, eyes wide with the normal kind of mourning. I looked him dead in the eye and said, Nothing I haven't already shown the court. The words landed like a stone in a still pond. He blinked, confusion writing its face. Court? He asked, like the syllable was foreign. I didn't say another word. I wiped the mirror clean, wrapped my robe tight, and walked out the room. Silence is a language. I spoke it fluently now. By the end of that month, the divorce papers were ready. Ms. Reeves called me in that morning and said, You want to serve him in person or by mail? I thought about it for a second. The idea of handing him the paper myself felt like handing him a truth he could no longer ignore. I said, I'll serve him myself. I want him to see what I paid for, with my money. The day I signed the service affidavit, the courthouse smelled like bleach and new contracts. Ms. Reeves patted my hand and said, You good, baby? Her voice was low, steady, like a metronome that kept time with courage. I nodded. I'm ready. Walking back through the sliding doors, the sun cut through the gray, white, and sharp as a promise. My freedom folder tucked under my arm like a child. I felt the weight and the lift of it at the same time. At home, the house looked smaller. Or maybe I was seeing it differently. The hallway that used to be a path now felt like a corridor to something else. Terrence was on the couch, the TV glowing. He looked up when I came in, like a man whose map had lost the north. "Where you been?" he asked. Voice small, defensive, like a boy caught chewing gum in class. "Court," I said, the word clean and even. He squinted. "Court for what?" I set my purse down, took the envelope out. The paper felt crisp between my fingers. "Just some paperwork," I said. Then I folded my lips around the truth like it was a secret, not yet ready to give it away. He laughed, nervous. "You fill out some forms. Girl, that paperwork be complicated." He tried to make the joke land. It landed clumsy. I put the envelope on the coffee table, face up. It looked ordinary, like any other bill. But what it said in ink changed the direction of the whole house. He picked it up with fingers that trembled but tried to hide it. As he read, color drained from his face like paint off a wall. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. For once, the TV could not drown the silence in the room. "You served me?" he managed, voice small and broken. "You what?" I met his eyes, didn't flinch. "Filed," I said. "Paid. Served." He stared at me like he was trying to find me in a crowd, as if the woman who stood there could be someone else's work. "You didn't have to do all that," he whispered. A plea, or an accusation, or both. I thought about all the dinners he threw away, the promises he papered over with cigarette smoke and late-night excuses. I thought about Mama's hands, the way she tied her scarf and told me not to be fooled by a man who confuses keeping with owning. "No," I said. "I didn't have to, but I did." He dropped the envelope like it burned him. It slid off the edge of the coffee table and landed on the rug with a soft slap. After he found out, he tried to bargain. "You sure you want to do this? We can talk it out." He used the small voice he thought would work. It didn't. Neighbors watched. Mrs. Lang left a casserole at the door and a caution in her eyes. Terrence's mama called and said, "Baby, you need to forgive." Forgiveness wasn't what I needed. I needed space. He tried little things to unsettle me. Locked toolbox lids, a text with a lie, missing socks from the laundry, petty storms meant to distract. I kept steady. I counted my breaths. I filed. I checked receipts. I kept the freedom folder on the top shelf like a promise. At church, women hugged me like shields. "You did the right thing," they said. I told my sister on the porch. She said, "Don't you go back." I promised I wouldn't. When I handed him the envelope, his face changed. He read. Color left him. He looked at me like I'd become someone else. I stayed calm. That calm was a language he hadn't learned to speak. That night, I slept light and woke lighter. The house felt different, not empty, rearranged. I made coffee without apology. I prayed for steady hands and for truth to be loud enough. This was quiet work, paper and patience, a slow, certain reclaiming of what was mine. It was a Tuesday, not a dramatic kind of day, just regular Baton Rouge heat sitting heavy on the air, the kind that presses against your skin like a question you don't want to answer. Cicadas hummed outside like the world was tired of pretending to care. The sky was white, not blue, too hot even for color. I came home from my shift early. My scrubs were folded neatly in my bag, replaced by my favorite soft denim dress, the one with the silver buttons running clean down the front. It hugged me in the right places, loose enough to breathe, fitted enough to remember who I was. My curls were pinned back neat, lip gloss subtle. Nothing flashy, just steady, just me. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the ceiling fan. I walked through each room slowly, like saying goodbye to a memory that didn't deserve me anymore. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fried chicken, his dinner from the night before. Same old house, same old silence. But something in the air was different now. It was lighter. It was mine. I set the envelope on the kitchen table. Not hidden, not loud, just there. A single white rectangle under the dim yellow light, its corners slightly bent from my grip. It didn't need decoration. Truth rarely does. Next to it, I left a note in my cleanest handwriting. Paid in full, Denise. I wrote slow, steady, deliberate. The ink bled a little on the paper, like even the pen understood the weight of what it was saying. Then I made myself a glass of lemon water, watched the slices float and catch the light like gold coins. I turned on the ceiling fan. Slow speed, the gentle kind that doesn't cool as much as it soothes. And then I waited. No music, no noise, just the sound of my own heartbeat catching rhythm with the spinning fan. I didn't pace, didn't scroll my phone, didn't rehearse what to say. I'd already said it. In every sleepless night, in every shift I worked, in every dollar I saved. He came in dragging his boots like he'd walked through hell, even though the job had already let him go. The screen door creaked open, hit the wall, then slammed shut behind him. The sound was sharp, final. He smelled like sun, sweat, and defeat. His shirt stuck to his back, collar damp, face shining with the kind of anger that doesn't have a home yet. He glanced around the room, the dishes clean, the couch neat, me sitting at the table with my ankles crossed and the TV low. I didn't move, just looked up at him, calm as a Sunday morning. He grunted something under his breath and reached for the remote. That's when he saw the envelope. His hand froze mid-air. "What's this?" he asked, frowning like the paper owed him an apology. "Go on," I said. "Read it." He picked it up slow, eyes darting between me and the handwriting he'd stopped recognizing years ago. He tore it open with rough fingers, the sound of paper ripping, cutting through the hum of the fan. He read the first few lines, stopped, blinked, read them again, slower this time. Then his head jerked up. You divorcing me?" I took a slow sip of water. The glass was cool against my lips. Already did. He laughed. That sharp fake sound that fills space when truth hits too hard. "Girl, stop playing. What lawyer you pay? With what money?" I leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes steady. "With mine. The money you said I didn't have. The money you said wasn't mine to begin with." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. For once he had no sermon. Silence sat heavy between us, thick as judgment. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of the fan chain spinning, the faint sound of a dog barking somewhere down the street. Everything ordinary except the air between us. He flipped through the pages like a man searching for a trap door. "But what about the house? The truck?" "Community property," I said calmly. 50-50 split. My lawyer filed all the paperwork. He blinked, voice cracking just a little. "Lawyer? Since when you got a lawyer?" I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes but didn't need to. "Since the day you bought that truck in my name." He stood there, shoulders squared, hands on his hips, trying to gather control like spilled sugar, but every grain kept slipping through. "This is a joke," he said, voice shaking with disbelief. "You not gonna make it without me." That's when I stood up, slow, deliberate. The chair scraped back across the tile, quiet but final. I walked over to him until the scent of sweat and sawdust filled my lungs, looked him right in the eye. "You've been saying that for years," I said softly, "but here I am, standing, filing, leaving, and I ain't raised my voice once." He tried to puff up, chest out like he used to when he thought volume meant victory. "You ungrateful," he spat, "after everything I'd done for you." I shook my head, calm as a preacher at the altar. "No, I was just quiet. There's a difference." His jaw flexed, fists balled at his sides, not because he wanted to hit me, but because he couldn't move me. Not anymore. He looked around the room like maybe something would change back if he stared long enough, like the past 20 years could climb back into place if he just found the right word. But nothing did, and he had no words left. I walked back to my chair. Sat down, picked up my glass of lemon water and took another slow sip. Didn't flinch when he slammed the door on his way out. Didn't even look up when the screen rattled, just breathed. The night came easy. The air cooled and the fan turned lazy circles above me. Somewhere in the distance, a train moaned across the bridge. I let the stillness wrap around me like a blanket. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions, the kind that answers them. That night, I slept better than I had in a decade, not because it was over, but because I ended it my way, with calm, with dignity, with my own money. And when I woke the next morning, sunlight spilling across the bedspread, I smiled at the simplest truth of all. Sometimes freedom doesn't roar. Sometimes it just exhales. The courthouse was quiet that morning. No drama, no shouting, just the soft squeak of shoes against the marble floor and the faint hum of old fluorescent lights flickering overhead. That kind of quiet that sits heavy, not empty, but waiting. The air smelled like paper and coffee gone cold. Clerks shuffled files behind glass windows, pens tapped against clipboards. It was business as usual, but for me it was the end of a long chapter, written in silence and strategy. I sat 3 rows back, right side, the same spot I always chose in that courtroom, a place where I could see everything without being seen too much. I wore my Sunday black, not for mourning, but for closure. Hair pressed, nails short, heels low. Every detail was deliberate, controlled, precise. I didn't want to look rich or broken or bitter. I wanted to look like peace. And that morning, I did. Across the aisle, Terrence shuffled in wearing the suit he hadn't touched since our cousin's funeral. Still had the dry cleaning tag half hanging from the inside seam. It didn't fit anymore. Too tight at the neck, too short at the wrists. The fabric tugged at his shoulders like even the clothes didn't want to belong to him anymore. He didn't look like a man in control. He looked like a man who'd just realized he was no longer holding the pen to his own story. The bailiff called our names. Carter versus Carter? My lawyer, Ms. Reeves, stood tall beside me, her papers stacked like a fortress of truth. Each sheet neatly clipped, highlighted, ready for battle. 62 years old, still sharper than any man in that room. The kind of woman who made silence feel like confidence, not fear. Terrence had some court-appointed man at his side, a younger guy with cheap cologne and a nervous shuffle. He flipped through the file like it was a deck of cards, already knowing the hand was bad. We went through the formalities, names, dates, documents entered into record. The judge's voice steady, low, practiced, like someone who'd seen every version of heartbreak come through those doors. The judge asked if both parties understood the terms. I nodded, calm, grounded. Terrence hesitated, his jaw twitched. "Your Honor," he said, voice cracking halfway through. I don't think this is fair. I paid for most of everything." That sentence echoed against the walls like an old habit refusing to die. I almost smiled. Almost. Ms. Reeves didn't flinch. She slid a packet across the desk with quiet precision. Receipts, bank statements, loan forms, proof that my income covered the down payment on our house, proof that his gambling drained the savings account, proof that he rerouted my direct deposits without my consent. Every lie documented, every manipulation printed in black and white. Silence had turned into evidence. The judge looked through the file slowly. He didn't look at me, didn't look at Terrence either. Just flipped, read, nodded. The hum of the overhead lights filled the pause. Then he spoke. "Mr. Carter, the law is clear. Community property means shared responsibility." And with one thump of his gavel, it was over. No dramatic music, no grand speech, just the sound of a wooden mallet meeting justice. We walked out into the Baton Rouge heat, sticky, loud, alive. Traffic rolling by, horns cutting through humidity. Somebody's car stereo playing Al Green from across the street. The courthouse doors swung shut behind me, heavy and final. It felt like they sealed something. Not a marriage, but a sentence I'd finally served my time in. Terrence followed me to the sidewalk. He looked smaller in the sunlight, like a man who'd spent too long believing his own myth. "Denise," he called out, voice unsure, "can we talk?" I stopped, turned. The wind caught the edge of my skirt. I held it steady with one hand. "Go ahead," I said. He stepped closer, eyes darting between the ground and my face. "I didn't know you felt like that. I was just trying to handle things. You know how men are." I raised my hand, calm and final. "I know how you are," I said, and I let it go on too long. That's on me. He blinked, trying to find footing in a world that had moved on without him. The silence between us stretched, thick with all the years we couldn't take back. He opened his mouth again, maybe to beg, maybe to blame. But I didn't owe him that space. "I said my piece," I told him. "Now you go find yours." He looked like he wanted to say my name one more time, but the words never came. I turned toward my car, didn't cry, didn't look back, didn't feel small. My heels clicked against the pavement, each step sounding like punctuation at the end of a long, unfinished sentence. By the time I reached the parking lot, I wasn't walking away. I was walking toward. 2 months later, I signed the deed to a 2-bedroom ranch house just outside Denham Springs. The realtor handed me the keys with a smile and a, "Congratulations, Miss Carter." Not Mrs., just Ms. That small detail felt like thunder in my chest. The house wasn't fancy. White siding, green shutters, a porch swing that creaked when the wind caught it. The kind of place that smelled like new paint and old dreams finally waking up. The first night, I sat on that porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched the sun tuck itself behind the pines. The air was thick but kind. The world didn't rush me anymore. Crickets sang. A neighbor's dog barked once and then went quiet. I listened to the sound of my own stillness. Something I hadn't heard in years. And I thought about every time he told me, "It's my money." Every single time those words had made me shrink just a little. Funny thing is, he was right. It was his money. That's why I made sure he paid for every penny he cost me. Ms. Reeves handled the final settlement like a queen in her element. He got the old truck, dented and due for repossession. I got the savings, the house equity, and the peace he could never afford. No fireworks, no bitterness, just balance. That night, I called Mama's sister, Aunt Carol, told her it was official. She laughed, that deep, full sound that made you feel like everything was going to be all right. "Mama would be proud," she said. Took her advice straight to heart. I smiled, thinking of Mama's voice. "There's power in peace," she used to say. "But don't forget, peace can pack a punch, too." And she was right, because mine did. Now I wake up to birds instead of arguments, bills with my name but no shame, freedom that feels like oxygen. I keep my old wedding ring in a small box, not out of pain but remembrance, proof that I survived something that tried to rewrite me. When I look in the mirror now, I don't see the tired woman who used to whisper her prayers through clenched teeth. I see someone whole, someone calm, someone capable. Peace isn't quiet anymore. It's the sound of my car starting in the morning, the sound of my laughter filling a room, the sound of a door closing, softly, but for good. And now, I'm living in peace, the kind you pay for yourself. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.